Welcome everybody to the Wake Up Call channel. Google Wallet is now taking the next step in allowing biometric passports inside of the Google Wallet. And this is a big deal because the more these things that are physical identities like licenses and passports become digital, the more this transition occurs, the closer we get to the digital ID, which most people out there dismiss and think of as nothing more than being on PayPal or being on the internet. They don't understand that the digital ID is going to enslave them. And eventually this digital ID, not now, not yet as they roll this out, is going to be embedded in you. You're only going to be able to buy and sell with a digital ID. You're only going to be able to post on the internet with a digital ID. They've made the internet the way it is now so that you have become so accustomed to the internet, so dependent on the internet for information, and of course, entertained by the internet, always needing to be on your phone and be on the internet. You're going to have a digital ID to access all of it in the future. That's how they've conditioned people, or why they've conditioned people into being so dependent on technology. When they pull the rug out from under them, people will not even think or blink when it comes to the government telling you you need a digital ID. They will go along with it. And it starts here. So Curtis over on the website shared this with everybody on the website on uprisinglives.com. And I want to share it with everybody here and thank Curtis for sharing it. The Google Wallet is rolling out support for American biometric passports. The post spotted by Android Police specifies that the feature will only be available in America to start. Users can scan their passport with Google Wallet to add it as an ID pass and can then perform identity verification by connecting their phone to an NFC scanner or scanning a QR code generated by the ID pass. They are still recommended to carry a physical copy of their passport for now. This feature is not currently live, but expected to be included in an imminent update. And this is how they're quietly doing it. They're quietly adding things like this, just like they did almost overnight. They had airline tickets, right? You went to the airport, you'd have to go to the machine, you'd have to get one printed out. All right, you have to go up to the teller, get the ticket printed out back in the 90s, at least then. Now they have the machines, and it's transitioned to the point where people just go into the airport, they have it on their phone, it's easy, it's convenient. That's how this is being rolled out, and people aren't even noticing what's going on. They're not thinking about government control and how once everything's digital, they're giving up all of their rights to some boogeyman that they don't know, and they just go, it's technology, just like they do with voting, right? They vote. They don't think for 5 seconds of how it's being tallied. They just trust in the technology. Same with this. Some boogeyman behind the curtain. Oz behind the curtain, right? Who you never question, you never know, because they don't tell you who it really is. But this is going to lead to more government control. And the digital ID has been the thing they've been pushing at the World Economic Forum, at other globalist events and meetings. They've been talking about a digital ID, which will tie in with the carbon footprint, which will enslave your movements, which will monitor and track every breath you take, almost like wearing one of those Fitbits. Every calorie you burn, all that stuff they're ingraining in your mind, it's all being done by design. Here's just a compilation of clips of what the plan is with the digital ID. And remember, there's going to be more outbreaks in the future. Of course, these are planned outbreaks. And they're going to tell you that during these planned outbreaks, they need to monitor people who have something and who don't have something. Of course, this is all being done by design to enslave humanity with a digital identity. It is very important that people pay attention to this. Here are some clips about it.
Digital ID for me is a very big part of the future, and let me explain why. So if you take the changes you've been making at Sberbank, because you've become not just a bank, but also a technology company, right? And you've been using technology to change the whole way you interact with your customers. So digital ID is, for me, absolutely crucial because, for example, on COVID, what is the problem with this coronavirus? The problem is it's not a disease that's so serious that it's like the plague, right? Most people who get it will survive it. However, it's bad enough, and we all know people who've had it and had it badly enough that you don't want to get it. So the problem is you have to lock down the entire economy in order to deal with the small number of people who get it and are going to suffer badly. A way out of this is to be able to test people several times and for people to actually have a biometric identity which can say, look, I've been tested or I've had the disease and here are my antibodies, so that life can get back to normal. So your digital ID can play a part in COVID, but also if you think of the transactions that you want to do now with your customers, it's much simpler for them if they have a digital identity. Or you take the big issue in the Western world today, which is, quite apart from COVID, I would say is worries about immigration, who has the right to be in your country, who has the right not to be. Without a form of identity, it's very hard to tell who's got a right to be in a country, who's not. So inevitably, governments are going to move in this direction. Absolutely inevitably.
Why? Because in order to open an account, you need to have an ID.
Right.
And I have to say that when I started this job, there were actually very little countries in Africa or Latin America that had one ubiquitous type of ID, and certainly that it was digital, and certainly that it was biometric. And we've really worked with all our partners to actually help that being, to grow this. And the interesting part of it is that, yes, it is very necessary for financial services, but not only.
Sure.
It's also good for school enrollment. It's also good for health, who actually got a vaccination or not. It's very good to get your subsidies, from the government. So this has not only effect to the financial services. It's a very important issue.
So let's have a digital health certificate acknowledged by WHO if you have been vaccinated or tested properly, then you can move around. So for the next pandemic, instead of stopping the movement of the people 100%, which clog the economy globally, you can still provide some movement of the people. Indonesia has achieved, G20 country has agreed to have this digital certificate using WHO standard, and we will submit into the next World Health Assembly in Geneva as the revision to international health regulation. So hopefully for the next pandemic, we can still see some movement of the people, some movement of the goods, and movement of the economy.
So again, you could see the tie-ins with the digital ID and the outbreak. We all heard during the outbreak about a digital passport. Who would be able to travel, who wouldn't be able to travel. They have not canceled those plans. Those plans haven't been canceled. They're altering the way that they're manipulating people into getting a digital ID. And they've taken a pivot. They expected people to be so fearful of their outbreak that they would all beg and want a digital passport and a digital ID. They didn't expect the majority of society to not only reject that notion, but to reject actually putting something inside of their bodies that they were told was good for them. Most people actually rejected that. So the pivot we've seen is what? The stories that continually come out about scamming, online anonymous people online calling and doing things, right? Like the story of the guy who had a delivery come to his door and he went outside, the old man, and shot the girl, right? Those stories are all being formulated. Why did the woman go there? She was told by somebody anonymously online to go there. And then they called the guy at the house. And what they tell the guy? They told the guy that they were going to come and rob him. So the man went and... These stories are out there because this is a different way that they're trying to get you to be afraid that you're going to get scammed or your ID is going to get hacked or your bank account is going to get drained down to nothing, right? So the digital ID is very important. And the first step that we see is Google Wallet with this biometric passport, okay? It's very important to pay attention to it. Google Wallet also added support for 29 more banks to its payment feature in June. And it's up to 170 added this year alone, indicating the focus remains on payments for now. Mobile driver's licenses from several states are already available on Google Wallet, which I've covered over the years. States like Georgia, Arizona, Colorado, and Maryland. Some Americans have already been using it at airports. They're trying to make this a seamless transition. This is what I've warned people about, right? PayPal, these types of things are transitions for people. Do we all use these types of payments online? Unfortunately, we do. I have to use stuff like that on my website, right? A lot of people out there have to use it for other things. They're forcing us almost into this digital realm where the payments have to be made online, but the verification is going to have to be a digital ID. And they'll come out with stuff too about scammers online, scamming the IRS, right? Not making their, paying the IRS, probably not reporting income online. These are all things that are lingering and floating around. And if they can seamlessly get people to hear something like this about Google Wallet now accepting a passport and not respond to it and just go, yeah, what's the big deal? Then they're winning, right? And then what do you think the response is for most people? They hear about this and they go, hey, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? I already have my license taken on my phone. What's the big deal about a digital license? They don't realize what this leads to, okay? To be able to use the internet, comment on the internet, do anything on the internet, you will have to have a digital ID. And then when all this stuff starts to go biometrics, like they're mentioning here with this passport, you're talking about biometrics and people go, well, is that just scanning my thumb or scanning my retina? It's embedded in you. It's embedded in your genetic code. Okay, so you're going to walk in and out of places and they're going to be able to just read you via your genetics. That's how they're going to be able to do this. They're going to scan you probably with a purple light. If anyone out there gets that reference, they'll be able to see who's got it, who doesn't have it, what's in them, what's not in them. And they'll go in and out, not as they please, because people who don't have this will not be able to buy or sell. And that's why I believe that this is the mark of the beast. Not necessarily this. I'm not saying that when they roll the digital wallet out like this and they roll out a digital ID, at first, the digital ID is not going to be embedded in people, but they're going to make it a necessity over time because they're going to phase things out. If you might have heard recently, Target phasing out personal checks. Now, I've mentioned in the past, I'm the kind of person, whenever I get in line at any store, I always end up behind the person who's paying with a personalized check, almost every time, especially at the grocery, okay? I always end up in the line that takes 45 minutes when somebody has one item because they pay with a personal check. Is it annoying? Absolutely, it's annoying. I have little patience. But I'm not against phasing that out because I know what's coming. And now we're seeing stores phase out personal checks. And what's the response to be? Well, who cares? Who pays with personal checks anymore? Instead of saying, well, why can't you? Why is it so difficult for you to take a personalized check? Well, they need to adopt with the times. They need to move with the times. They're going to phase out cash. They're phasing all this stuff out so that everything is done digitally. And the majority of people don't see the danger in all this because they don't see how China functions. They don't understand how communist societies function. But in the future, when you disagree with government, when you say something the government doesn't like, when you behave a way the government doesn't agree with, they will lock your bank accounts. They will freeze what you can and cannot do. And people go, well, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about it because I'm a Democrat. I don't care about this or that. Yeah, right now you don't care because they're catering to you and they're pampering to you. But they will turn on you. And when they start shutting your air condition off on a 100-degree day, you might hear it now and say, fine, I'm all for it. I'm all for caring about others and shutting it down. But when you figure out that the climate scam is nothing more than a scam, and when you start figuring out what's going on, all control is going to already be given to the government through the digital ID. And then you'll say, well, wait a minute, I need my air on. It's 100 degrees. My health isn't great. And they're not even going to respond. Kind of like when you call some of these customer service places and you're trying to get someone on the phone, you can't. You just get a robot. That's what you're going to get. They're just going to ignore you. They're not even going to respond to it. They're not going to be held accountable for it. And suddenly you're going to go, how is all this happening? Where are all my rights? Where are all my freedoms? And once you give all that up digitally, the government's going to start taking more, as if they're not already doing it in today's world. So the digital ID is big. It's always been a big part of their plan. And Google Wallet, the way that they're transitioning, Apple Pay, these corporations and these brands are going to give you these different looks to what it looks like, right? Like they're not going to force you into just everybody getting Google Wallet. Someone's going to go, well, I don't want Google Wallet. I don't trust Google, but I trust Apple. And they're all together. It's all under the government's footprint. The illusion of choice, the illusion of freedom. But once you start giving them this stuff, right now, a lot of people out there don't care. They're not going to feel it. They're not going to feel it the way that a lot of us feel it with free speech, right? We all feel that. And people go, well, that's because the stuff you say shouldn't be allowed to be talked about. But eventually, when these people complain that the government is not giving them enough food, or they want to go to the grocery store and buy X amount of food and the government doesn't let them, and they start complaining about it, their accounts are going to be frozen. They go, that's never going to get to that point. It 100% is. And don't forget how China operates, not just with their communist society, but don't forget how they operate with their social credit score and how everybody's been conditioned into a credit score in America specifically with, hey, are you paying your bills on time? A social credit score is based off of your behavior. And my videos are on the website all about the social credit score. I'm sure a lot of you have seen Black Mirror even referencing it, but it's really going on in China where people are given a social credit score the same way you would get a credit score for your credit card, how your credit is, good or bad. And that's based on your behavior. And you might say, well, I'm a good person. I don't kill. I don't steal. It has nothing to do with those things. They actually don't give a crap about that type of stuff, really. I mean, of course, it'll nick your credit score. It's about your behavior as far as compliance goes. So whatever the government tells you to do, even if they tell you to share your wife with Xi Jinping or whatever they decide to do, if you respond negatively, your credit score is affected negatively. And these people in China are getting frozen out of travel. They're getting frozen out of their bank accounts. That's what this is. And everybody out there looks at it and they go, I don't have to worry about that yet. I don't have to worry about that because I'm a good person. They don't realize that you're giving up and ceasing control over your own life to an untrustworthy government. That's why I emphasize to people out there, if you're trying to wake people up who are one way or the other, Democrats or conservatives who don't get this, just tell them to imagine if all the power, that Donald Trump had this over Democrats, this digital ID, and that they could freeze their bank account and do this. Then they would go, oh my goodness, I could see that happening with Donald Trump in power because I'm gay or whatever. He would freeze my bank account. Okay, good. So we can't have this type of technology in place, right? Right. That's how you have to get some of these people who don't see it because they just go, oh, I love my tech. And remember, the left and right is together as far as the technology goes. They can't live without it. They're dependent on it. They're obsessed with it. And that is a big problem. Conservatives are just as much under this mind control hypnosis as Democrats are. They're in on the tech. Their alt-right media does not provide them any of the stuff that they should be provided as far as understanding what's happening. They don't understand the climate agenda, and the alt-right media is making sure they're gatekeeping for it by just saying it's a climate cult. It's not a big deal. They don't understand the threat of what they're doing with weather modification, okay? They don't talk to them about secret societies, the people responsible. They're never going to figure it out. But unfortunately, the people who claim to be red-pilled are just as blue-pilled as the people who are proudly blue-pilled. So watch where these stories go with technology and how people just comply to it and don't care about it. And try to get people to wake up to imagining this power being in the hands of someone they don't trust. Because the government is working together and they cannot be trusted. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all well. God bless you and your families as always.